Hey solos. So, can you go to Walt Disney World by yourself and not actually go to the parks at all? Solo spoiler, yes, you can, and I would highly recommend it. There are so many activities to do all around the Walt Disney World Resort, and a lot of them are designed actually for adults. That if you were going solo and you're going fairly often, so you don't mind missing a park day, then definitely take advantage of all of the recreation activities that are around the Walt Disney World Resort property. Hi everyone, it's Samantha. Olaf may not know who Samantha is, but now you do. And welcome to Disney Solo Magic, the #1 podcast about solo travel to Disney World. In today's episode, I'm going to be talking about all the activities that you can do around the hotels, ones that are free, ones mainly that you pay for, and I am really excited to be able to share with you all these exciting activities because I think they go unnoticed for the most part. And again, I just think there's such great activities to do when you're traveling to Disney solo and you don't mind taking like a whole day or a whole afternoon out of your park experiences. If you follow me on Instagram, you already know that I do some of these activities. And if you don't follow me on Instagram, you can, because there is a link to my Instagram in the description of this episode, as well as a link to Threads and to Facebook. Now, you are listening to this on either Apple, Spotify, or on YouTube, but do you know that you can listen to this episode also on Spotify, YouTube, and Apple? ... question mark. So no matter where you're listening, there are a couple other options, and please make sure that you rate, you subscribe, you review, and pass this around to other people so that they know both that this podcast exists, but also that there are these tons of activities to do as an adult that don't involve going to the parks, because maybe your solo trip isn't just solo, it's like you and your bestie without partners and kids, and so you can be like, we could do this. We could do a solo trip to Disney and do this. So anyway, pass this around for people as well. Before we get started, just a shout out to all the solos who will be at Walt Disney World this week. I see you, and I hope that you are bringing the solo magic to Walt Disney World, because it really is just going to be so fantastic because you are there and you are solo. So have a wonderful time. Okay, let's get into it. All right, solos. Now, this could be a long episode. I'm not quite sure because I have so much to say about all the different resort activities, and I want to make sure I capture it all, but I'll go into some deep dives maybe in like future episodes. So I'll provide an overview, I'll talk about my experiences doing some of the activities, and then like obviously DM me with questions. Instagram is the best way to get in touch with me, and then I can know what other things to talk about in future episodes. So when I am talking about resort activities, what might come to mind are like those posters that you'll see almost right away when you get to your Disney World resort. Things like the campfire, things like movies on the lawn, things like crafts around the pool. All of these are like the standard ones that you know about. Well, I assume that you know about. And I think for the most part, like I think of those ones as things that are like part of the quote unquote kids clubs. Like obviously you can watch the movie on the lawn and participate in the campfire and do the crafts by the pool, all of that stuff. I generally think of those things as designed for kids. One of the activities that you see a lot by the pool are Mickey tie-dye, like to make a tie-dye shirt. I have done that. It was fun. It wasn't awkward at all. I went kind of later in the hour that it takes place, and so there weren't any like kids around. And yeah, it wasn't awkward at all. It wasn't weird. It was really fun. So go do them for sure. But that's not really what this episode is going to be about. But even though it's not what the episode's going to be about, let me just give you a quick overview. All of the resorts do an evening campfire. It's around 6:30, 7 o'clock, kind of early. I don't participate in these because like I want my burnt marshmallows at 10:30 at night, not at 6:30 at night. Right after this campfire, there is a movie on the lawn, and you might think, well, where? Because I don't see any like projection or screen. It's a blow up screen. It's usually quite close to where the campfire is, and it plays a different movie every night. I have never seen a lot of people, a lot of like families go and watch these movies, but it's a nice option. And it's even nice just to be walking around the resort and hearing the movie, because obviously it's going to be a Disney movie, but it's just nice to like, I don't know, have those like movie touch points while you're there. Like I said, all of the resorts have a campfire and have a movie on the lawn. And except for one situation, which I will talk about at the end of the episode, there's really no reason to go to the different resorts to like see a particular movie on the lawn or to do their campfire. Like by and large, all of the stuff is going to be the same. And if you don't see a Disney movie that you like on the Disney on the Lawn, you don't need to go to another resort. You can, if you have Disney Plus, you can stream it to your TV in the resort. So anyway, I wouldn't go around looking for those different movies and campfire experiences, except for one exception. I'll talk about that at the end. It's the same thing with those crafts by the pool. Like maybe this resort has make your own pixie dust, and maybe this resort has make your own slime. But generally, these aren't, like I said, the ones by the pool, the ones that are kind of around the different, like, I don't know, they don't really have a kids club room, but maybe you know what I mean, all the ones that are kind of like in the kids club room, they're all quite similar across resorts. So I don't necessarily think you need to go and find or go and look for some of these activities at the resorts. If you are at a resort and you see that they're going to be doing a cool activity and this isn't the resort that you're staying at, then go do it, But these resort activities, I wouldn't take time out of your schedule to do. However, there are activities that I would take out of my regular park schedule to travel to a different resort to do. For example, there are a few resorts that have bicycle rentals. And even if you're not staying at those resorts, you can go over to those resorts and rent a bike for an hour or rent a bike for the day and just kind of bike around the different resort. And they're all like landlocked places. And usually it's like two resorts, actually, 2 or 3 resorts that you can kind of bike between. You're not going on main roads. You're not biking to Target. You're really just like biking within the different hotels. And I've done it once, and it was just so relaxing and so serene. And it's something I've thought about doing at another resort, and I haven't had time in the last year or so, but it's really such a cool way to experience the Disney hotels. So what comes to mind immediately is Port Orleans Riverside and Port Orleans French Quarter. You can rent a bike and go between the 2 hotels. You can also rent a bike at Fort Wilderness. There is a Surrey bike rental where you would ride with other people at the boardwalk and the yacht club. And they used to have bike rentals around Wilderness Lodge, but they don't have those anymore. So if you want to rent a bike, go over to Port Orleans Riverside. They're right there where the boats are to take you to Disney Springs. Rent it for an hour, like go back and forth between the 2 resorts, check out the river. It's just so lovely and serene. Or rent a bike at Fort Wilderness. I'll talk about Fort Wilderness a little bit more at the end, but it's a whole campground. It's like a whole forest. It would be such a cool experience. It would be so shocking if you have never experienced it to go and rent a bike and just bike around for the afternoon. You won't believe what you can see just so close to the Magic Kingdom. Some of these same resorts have boat rentals. Fort Wilderness has kayak rentals. You also have things like fishing pole rentals. All of that is available. And I've never gone fishing there or ever, so I don't know what the cost is off the top of my head. And yeah, of course, it's all a little bit more than you think you should pay in the real world, but it's Disney. And because you're there by yourself, you're only paying for one. And because it would be a really unique, different activity and a different way to commune with Disney to conjure some solo magic, I don't think any of those things are unreasonably priced, I guess. I don't know how your money works. No judgment, obviously. Many of these resorts also have running trails and jogging trails. And you might not need a sign necessarily to tell you where the jogging trail is, but it's actually quite helpful to see where Disney is encouraging you to go and run. So for example, around Hourglass Lake between Pop Century and Art of Animation, there's a little map there that's this is the place that you can run around that's completely safe. And because you don't normally think of the other connection points between Art of Animation and Pop Century, you might be worried, if I go too much in this direction, I'll hit the parking lot and then I'll be on the main street and then I won't be at Disney again. The maps really help focus where you're going to be. Most of the resorts have a jogging trail. I mean, it's really just like I said, the like regular trail that you can see, but the maps are useful. If you don't necessarily see where the like appropriate jogging trail is, just ask a cast member and they will point you to the right place to safely run or walk or do whatever heartbeat activity you want to do. And I do see people do the running and jogging trails, and I'm always like, yay, look at you. I'm going back to bed now, but thank you so much for coming out and using it. So anyway, you have the running and jogging trails as well. One of the nice things about the running and jogging trails is that it will take you to maybe parts of the hotel that you don't normally see. And so it might be worth going to a different hotel to do that running and jogging trail. But just a reminder that you can also go to these other hotels and just look around the property and explore what it has to offer as well. So you're not a jogger, you're not a fisher, you're not a bicyclist. That's okay. You can still go to Port Orleans Riverside and walk around. You can still walk between Riverside and French Quarter. You can also go to Animal Kingdom Lodge, which is something I've talked about a few times in this podcast, and go and like see the savannah and just like sit on all of these chairs and watch all the animals. And you can do that and not go to Animal Kingdom at all. Before I had an annual pass, actually, to like, quote, save money, I would just get like a 2-day park pass and I would go to Epcot and I'd go to Magic Kingdom. And then on the last day of the trip, I would just take the bus over to Animal Kingdom Lodge and just hang out there. Go look at the animals, eat some of the delicious food. But they also have a really extensive educational recreation program there where cast members will do activities with you as well as provide information. And yeah, it's usually for kids, but I've done it as an adult and you get these like little beads if you complete the activity correctly, which I did because I'm a grown woman in my 40s, but it was really cool to be able to see all that Animal Kingdom Lodge, just the hotel, has to offer. So yeah, you can go and do some fishing at Wilderness Lodge, for example, or you can just go and like walk around Wilderness Lodge. You can go and do the running trail that goes between the yacht club, the beach club, and the boardwalk, or you can just walk between those hotels and see what they have to offer. Again, you're not supposed to swim in any of the pools that aren't yours, so I am not advocating that at all, but there is a ton of other things to do. And when you are doing that, look out for these recreation guides because it will tell you what other activities there are. Now, I'd like to say that this is how I first learned about all of the different activities that were happening at the hotels, but it's not. So one day I was just, mindlessly scrolling and I went over to the Disney website and it says like places to eat or places to stay, things to do. And if you do the drop down things to do menu, it will show you enchanted extras. And I was like, I like enchantment. I like extras. So I clicked there and I saw that there was an activity for Spanish mosaic art at the Coronado Hotel. And I love mosaics and I can be crafty sometimes. So that was always an activity that I wanted to book. And it's under Enchanted Extras, so I would go and see if there was a time available. And I could never book a time. And I would see on the calendar, it happened like a couple times a week. There's a cost to these. I can't remember how much it would cost. I'm going to say $50, give or take. But I could never get a reservation. And there were times too where I didn't even check if there were spots because my day was so booked that I didn't necessarily want to spend half the day at the Coronado Springs Hotel because it happens in the afternoon. And if you listen to my Coronado Springs review, you know that one of the things I hate the most about the Coronado is that there is no place to get food in the middle of the afternoon. So in my brain, I'm also just like, oh my God, I'll have to go to Coronado and I won't be able to eat. So yeah, anyway, it never happened for, like I said, a variety of kind of practical reasons. Then in January, I was staying at the Coronado. We were staying at club level, actually, my mother and I. It was her Christmas present. And I was like, oh, this is a really good time to see if I can do the mosaic art. And I checked 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 because I really wanted to do this activity when we were there. And I would just be doing it solo. Again, when I go with my mother, most of the things I'm doing are by myself. She just wants to be in Florida. She just wants to be in Florida surrounded by good customer service. And like, I don't know, don't we all? No, maybe not in Florida. She just wants to be like in hot weather at Disney. I should say it that way. No offense to Florida, obviously. So anyway, I'm trying to get a date for the time that we are there. It's only going to be a few days, and I actually used an app, and it's called Stakeout. It's normally used for people trying to get dining reservations. It's a paid app, but you have one different quote-unquote stakeout that you can get for free. And what that is that you are identifying a place and a time, and you're saying when the availability for this place and time comes up, send me a text message. Like I said, most people do it for dining, but it's actually a really great app to use for some of these activities as well, because with dining, there can be a lot of different times, right? 5 p.m., 8 p.m., like so many times. But with these activities, there's only one time. So if something comes up, you know that it's really there. Like if you're saying, oh, I want this dining reservation at 5 p.m., and then one comes up at 9 p.m., they're not going to let you know because that wasn't the time you picked. But here, if there's a time, they'll let you know right away. So I can't remember if I used Stakeout or I just kept checking, but I know I've used Stakeout successfully for a couple other of these experiences. But anyway, I got it. It's a long preamble to say I got it. And there were people that were there lined up as kind of a wait list. Like if anyone didn't show up or there were any extra spots, they would be able to fill those gaps. So I didn't realize that was an option as well, but that is an option as well. And I was really excited about this activity. It's one I wanted to do for so long. And I was telling a friend beforehand, like, oh my gosh, I hope I'm not the only adult. I had no problem being there by myself, but if I was the only adult, I would have to like switch into a particular different like mindset or whatever. So we're all in the place right outside the Dahlia Lounge. It's on the 16th floor. It wasn't open because it was in the middle of the afternoon. So we get this beautiful Dahlia Lounge all to ourselves to do this artwork. And we're standing outside the Dahlia Lounge waiting for the cast members to let us in. And I'm like, oh, it's all adults. It's all adults. And quite a few people were there solo. So I shouldn't have been worried about being the only adult. And like I said, there were quite a few people who were there solo as well. In fact, there was a mom with 2 little girls who came on like the wait list to see if they could come in, and they got turned away because it was just like all of us adults wanting to do these crafts for ourselves. And fine. I was cool with that, obviously. So you go in, you get this like ceramic Mickey head, well, like just like the Mickey ears. You get to choose a couple of the different styles. You can choose if it was in black, you can choose if it was in white. And then the cast members lead you through creating your own mosaic. You can choose your own little jewels. There was a ton of different colors and different shapes and different like glitteriness. And they just walk you through how to do it. And then there's like this period where you have to like let it dry before you go into the next step. And then they sell different beverages, both hard beverages as well as soft beverages. I was staying at club level, like I said, so I went down to club level and I got myself a coffee, and I came back up. And the Dahlia Lounge just has a really, really great balcony. Like, even if you aren't interested in any of these craft activities, definitely go and take a look at the Dahlia Lounge and also the Dahlia balcony. You can see Epcot, you can see Hollywood Studios, you can see Animal Kingdom. It's really beautiful, actually. And I just sat on this balcony after doing this like little artwork that I did, where I was just like in this lovely little zone of creation, drinking my iced coffee, and it just felt like solo magic. It really was such a kind of perfect moment. It encapsulated so much of what I want from solo vacations, to do something new, to be able to explore like not a new talent, but like a new activity or a new thing that I wouldn't necessarily do in my normal life. I was here with this beautiful view. Like, it just encapsulated solo magic. And like I said, this was in January, and that was really the percolation of this podcast, because it just felt like such a wonderful moment. The lounge, like I said, is set up for this activity. There were bar tables as well as kind of smaller lounge tables, and there were solos doing it. And I was able to have a little table to myself, and didn't mind that. In fact, I actually preferred it because I just wanted to be in my own zone. And I had put on the music that normally they play in the Dahlia Lounge. And I was just, like I said, doing this little art, talking to the cast members, knowing I had this wonderful view. And it was just a really lovely experience. And this is the kind of like energy that I hope that you have with your solo trips as well. I saw this thing on Instagram that said something like, things like art, also physical activity like sports and exercise, which it's not my thing, but things like art is a way to like get trauma out of your body. And maybe trauma is a little bit of hyperbole for the different experiences one has gone through, or you have gone through, or I have gone through. But to me at that moment, it really just felt like, yeah, like this is why we go to Disney, because there are just so many of these wonderful experiences that you get to have that you might not have in your normal life. And I took the little mosaic home. It's still by my bed, and it's just one of the most wonderful souvenirs that I have, because to me, like I said, it really encapsulates solo magic. And it was an activity that I had longed to do for so long. But solos. The more I have gone to Disney and like kept an eye out on different resort activities, the more I saw that while this activity can be done at Coronado by signing up for the Enchanted Extras, the mosaic activity can actually be done at a lot of the different resorts as well. I saw at the All-Star Music, you can do a mosaic of like a music note. I saw at the Riviera, I think you can do a Mickey at the Riviera actually. It was like, hey, sign up for a mosaic class. So there you go. Here's the thing. There are a ton of different activities that you can do that aren't in the Enchanted Extras. And that was what was frustrating about coming up with this particular episode, because I knew I was going to tell you about all these things, but I also know that I can't necessarily like tell you definitively when and where and how much and what some of these activities will be. So you do have to go and kind of do a scout around. But remember, go scout around at hotels that aren't your own. I did it at Coronado because I was staying at the Coronado, and with staying at club level, it was already going to be kind of a chill hotel in which we were going to spend more time at the hotel than normal, even though I don't like the Coronado, and although club level was amazing. But not great for solos. I'll actually talk about that coming up in an episode I'm doing about do not to do these things at Disney solo. Oh gosh. This community of listeners have been really, really great, but sometimes I'll mention some of those things on like a Facebook group and people will just get very angry. So again, you do you, bibbidi bobbidi boo. Club level was awesome, but maybe not a great value for solos. That's not what we're talking about today. Back to the mosaics. So yeah, it was great to do it at Coronado. I recommend doing it at Coronado because you get to do it in the Dahlia Lounge. But if you just want to do a mosaic and you don't necessarily want this whole big Zen experience in the Dahlia Lounge, then just go and see at the resort that you're staying at if they do the mosaic. And if they don't, then go check out another hotel and see if they have it as well. And again, with those ones, it's not as formal a sign up, and there might be a greater chance that you'll be able to get kind of a last minute booking for that. So check that out. The other thing that I noticed when I was trying to book this Coronado mosaic for so long is that the Coronado has another activity, which is a painting activity. And it seems like it's kind of like something that you might see in some people's towns and cities where it's like a drink paint night, like you go and you have a glass of wine and you paint something with your friends, etc., etc. So it seemed like that, although maybe not with the booze at Disney. Or not like you can buy it, but it's not included necessarily. And so when I would go to the Enchanted Extras part of the website and I would look at the Coronado offerings, I would see they'd had this painting thing as well. And I'm not really interested in that. I know what my painting looks like. It's not great. And I just don't quite feel as called to do that as other things. But I think it's a really cool option and really fun to do it solo as well. But then, again, solos, I have now seen that you can do these painting activities at quite a few of the resorts. I've seen it at Riviera, I've seen it at the Yacht and Beach Club, and if I kept looking around, I'm sure I would see it in some other places. So if you are interested in painting, and these activities, again, they are ones that are more designed for adults. A lot of them have an age limit that starts at 12, for example. And so it's not just like, okay, like here's some paints, like do your own thing. It's set up with an easel and all of that stuff. And the idea is that you take your canvas home and you can put it up. And so again, go take a look. Look for these activities because I think that they are at more hotels than you would think and a really great thing to do solo. Coronado has one other quote unquote enchanted extra that you can't actually do anywhere else, and that is Sangria University. This is held at the Three Bridges Bar and Lounge, which is that bar and lounge right in the middle of the water, right in the middle of Coronado. And it is an overview and history of sangria. It's a tasting of sangria. And then I think you get to mix your own as well. Obviously, this is an activity that's just for adults, and it's held fairly often. Now, as a non-drinker, I haven't done this activity, but if I did drink alcohol, it is exactly the type of activity that I would be into. You're going to be outdoors in a lounge, learning history, creating stuff, and trying stuff. Oh my gosh, like I have actually considered doing it despite not drinking anything since I was like 16. But I just thought I would probably get very loud because I'm not used to drinking alcohol and it would be awkward. I also have a pineapple allergy and I think that there is some pineapple in sangria sometimes. So I've said no to it, but it's one of those activities that just seems so fun and also an activity that you can do solo, no problem. So the Coronado is one of those hotels that you actually will see a lot of these extra resort activities. And again, I think that's because it's a conference hotel, and maybe because it is a conference hotel, that's why you can sign up to things online. They're maybe making the assumption that people will be coming to the hotel that don't normally know Disney, and if they're just kind of checking out what you can do there, they can see online some of the different options. Or the recreation staff at Coronado are just like, hey, we should put this on the website. I don't know. But the Coronado has a lot of enchanted extras. So do the other hotels too. But another place or two places that have a lot of these enchanted extras are the Wilderness Lodge and Fort Wilderness. So last year when I was staying at Fort Wilderness, I was like swimming in a pool and I was telling some people about one of the enchanted extras that I had done. I'll talk about that in a second. And the woman in the pool is like, oh yeah, I've done some cool things too. Like last year I made this cutting board, this Disney cutting board. I was like, sorry, what now? She's like, yeah, I made this cutting board and then my daughters, they made this wooden sign for outside of our trailer. And I was like, what are you like talking about? And honestly, I thought she was crazy. So I was like, oh, that's great. But also, where can you do those things? So then I started like looking around because I hadn't seen this on the website at all. And she's 100% correct. It's called Tasteful Artistry. And you don't make, well, at least not right now, you're not making a cutting board or you're not making signs for outside a trailer or outside your home. You're making either like a charcuterie board or you're making a board that has hooks on it. And I did that this time and it was so fun. It was really, really great. It was held at Wilderness Lodge at the Artist Point Hotel where they do the Snow White dining. It was in the afternoon. It's about three and a half hours. And yeah, you're making this beautiful board. You choose from one of the many stencils that she has provided. It's a third-party company that creates it all and then leads you through this activity. And she has designed, the woman that I worked with, she's designed such beautiful, amazing stencils. Things that say like, welcome foolish mortals. There was a really cool stencil that was like a tray for Santa where you could put like a space for a cup of milk and a carrot and a cookie. There were other stencils that had like the 4 icons of each park. They were all just so beautiful. I did one that said believe, and I don't want to toot my own horn, but it was so beautiful. Oh, sorry, I don't know why I'm talking about it in past tense. It is so beautiful. I was just so it's a stencil, so I'm not as worried about the painting, for example, as like the actual painting activity. I could not believe how beautiful they turned out. She walks you through the activity, but also makes sure that you are engaging with the activity properly, so you're going to get a really nice product at the end. You choose the stain for your board, you choose the stencil, you choose all the different colors, and you just start painting. You just start painting and layering colors on top of each other. At the end, you then peel the stencil off and you get this gorgeous, gorgeous work of art. And there were quite a few people that did the same believe thing that I had done, and they all looked so different. They all looked beautiful, they all looked cool, but they looked completely different. And that was what was really awesome about the activity, because it was really great not to just have the same replicated piece of art. This was really something that you got to do and design for yourself. When you come into the restaurant, you will find your table. You'll have has a little tent card with your name on it, and you'll probably be sat by yourself if you're solo. Again, I'm very serious about my art, so I had no problem with that. But actually, because you can have a guest that comes with you for no additional charge, my mother popped in and out every once in a while just to like see what things were, even though she wasn't making her own board at all. So if you have it's like price per board, but if you have one board, you can have 2 people, if that makes any sense. It also includes an alcoholic drink and, of course, unlimited soft drinks. They brought out some different flavored popcorn as well as some flatbread, which was really delicious. But, and this I'm going to talk about in an upcoming episode as well, there was a lot of, it was a loaded baked potato flatbread, and it had bacon and ham on it, and I don't really eat a lot of pork. So I just said, like, is there a vegetarian option? And they like made me a vegetarian option, which a friend of mine was so mortified that I asked, but why? Just ask for what you want. It wasn't going to be like, I wasn't asking for anything more. I was just like asking to be able to like eat the same thing that everybody else ate without having to like pick off bacon bits. Like, no, thank you. So it was just a really like very, very cool experience. And I was so proud of what I made. As I was like walking through the hotel afterwards, I'd like pull it out of the bag and show people, and people would be like, oh, that's really great. And I'm like, thanks, I made it. Yeah, it was kind of expensive though. It was like $140, and that was with a discount, which is like the price of a park ticket. And again, it was like 3.5 hours, but I ate, I drank, I had this beautiful souvenir, and it was totally worth it. Like, sure, it was expensive for sure. But if I like combined the cost of the mosaic and this cost, I'm very happy with the total price for those 2 activities, if that makes any sense. So when I talked to this lady in the pool last year, she said you can do it at Wilderness Lodge. So in my brain, you could only do it at Wilderness Lodge. But I also saw that you can do it at Fort Wilderness on a different day of the week. And so that was a really good option if I needed or wanted that option. And I overheard somebody talking to the leader of the activity and asking like, oh, do you do this at other hotels? And she said, I also do this at Fort Wilderness. It is a different company that does them at any of the other hotels. And so that's interesting because I haven't seen this promoted as much at the other hotels, but like the painting thing, it's kind of one of those like sneaky things that all of a sudden you'll just bump into it and be like, oh, look at what they're offering here. So definitely at Fort Wilderness and Wilderness Lodge. But if you're staying at a deluxe or a deluxe villa hotel, you should check out if they have this as an offering as well. Well worth it, despite the cost. So yes, Wilderness Lodge has this painting. Wilderness Lodge also has a 9 a.m., so I've never done it because that's early for me, a 9 a.m. tour of the lobby. So again, you can go and join, that's free. Take a look. But the other hotel that is really just like a hotbed of extra things that you can do is Fort Wilderness, which is the neighboring hotel to Wilderness Lodge. They used to be connected by a pathway. You used to be able to walk or take a bike between the two hotels. You haven't been able to do that for a very long time, but there is a bus that runs between the two of them and a boat that runs between the two of them after 3 p.m. However, you can also just take like a bus to Fort Wilderness from one of the parks or a boat from Magic Kingdom to Fort Wilderness as well. Fort Wilderness has kind of like an opening day. It's not really an opening day hotel, but it kind of is. It was really designed to be another type of attraction location at the Walt Disney World Resort property in the 70s. That lake that's there is actually a naturally occurring lake. And, you know, if you are looking at the Contemporary Resort, I know this seems like I am changing tactics, but I'm not. If you look at the Contemporary Resort, the view that you might think of as the front view, because it faces Magic Kingdom, was actually designed to be the back view, which is why that parking lot is right there. The front view of Contemporary Resort is the one facing the lake, because it was the idea that you were going to be at this Florida destination and you could swim in the lake, you could jet ski in the lake, you could, what's that called? Water ski. Yeah, that's it. I'm like going through a variety of different wrong words in my brain. Water ski on the lake. Like, it was designed to be like that waterfront was supposed to be one of the main attractions to staying at the Contemporary Hotel. On the other side of the lake is where they had Fort Wilderness, and there is that island in between those hotels, and that island actually was called Discovery Island, that closed about 20 years ago. That was a place that you could go and look at animals and things like that. I actually have a lot of really cool stories that I've heard about Discovery Island, but I'm going to save them for another episode. But also, do you know that deer swim? That was something I learned related to that little island on my last trip. Anyway, so Fort Wilderness, on the other side of that lake, had the River Country Water Park that's been closed for a really long time. It had a beachfront that, again, you could swim in. It had no pool when it first opened. You were only swimming in the lake. And there is like a water tower by the pool's water slide that actually came from River Country Water Park that they put there so it didn't go to waste, because like they needed to build a pool when they had to get people out of that lake. The Fort Wilderness property is so big. Up until last year, you could camp there in just like a regular old tent. That's not available anymore. Most people come with a big camper or trailer or fifth wheel. Every time I use one of these words to a person staying there in one of these vehicles, they correct me. So I don't know what the right terminology is, but like, you know, a big trailer, camper, fifth wheel, you know, one of those big things. You can bring your big vehicle there and camp out. It's the cheapest accommodation at Disney, because you are really just paying for a spot. You're not paying for a hotel room. And so actually some people have taken advantage of that to book dining reservations, etc., etc. I do not advocate for that, but it's actually quite an affordable way if you have a camper or a trailer to stay at Disney. And then there's also the cabins that you can stay in. And I stayed at the cabin last year. I stayed at a cabin this year. The cabins are changing, and I think there's going to be a lot of changes to Fort Wilderness in the next 5 years. But hopefully, the things I'm going to be telling you about for the remainder of this episode will remain. So when they were building it, they were thinking that this was going to be this campground that is on the Florida lake. And so it was designed as a large, very woodsy activity where you could really just stay there for a ton of time and do the camping thing. And I know that there are a lot of families that will, go and stay, not even just families, like singles, couples, etc., will go and stay in their campers for like months, like all through the winter, for example, and never go to the parks at all, because there is so much to do at Fort Wilderness that there's really no reason to have to go to the parks. In fact, when I was there that first week of September, I bumped into some of these kids and they were like telling me about all their souvenirs. And I said, "Oh, are you going to Magic Kingdom tomorrow?" And the little girl, she's like, "Oh, no, we're not going to do any of those parks. Do you know how expensive it is? Instead, we're just going to like do all the stuff around here." And her grandpa was like, "Yes, finally, they understand what we're doing here." So yeah, so I'm saying this not to say go stay there, although maybe you want to stay there, but to let you know that a lot of this stuff is also available for you staying at another Disney World hotel to go and use. So for example, you can rent bikes there, you can rent kayaks, you can rent fishing equipment, you can play like frisbee golf, you can walk around the property and look for deer, which is something that I loved to do when I was there. There is a white sand beach. You can't go swimming in the water anymore, but you can go and get like a delicious coffee or an ice cream, or actually there's a bar lounge there right where the boat dock is coming from Magic Kingdom that just has some delicious food, and go and sit in a Muskoka chair, or I guess they're called Adirondack chairs in the United States, and like watch this beautiful sunset. You can also see the fireworks from Magic Kingdom at Fort Wilderness. The Main Street Electrical Parade, no, that's wrong. The Water Parade, I can't remember what that's called, goes around Fort Wilderness. And because there is a boat that goes back and forth between Magic Kingdom and Fort Wilderness, it's actually quite easy to get there and be able to sit on the water and experience some of these things. There are 2 horse barns. There is a fancy one, kind of like I said, right at that area where the beach is, and you can go and just walk around and talk to cast members and see the horses. It's, I'm not a horse person, so I didn't really have any good questions, but I knew that all the cast members had a ton of really interesting information. I just could not figure out the key to be able to unlock that information. But the barn was so beautiful. There is an older barn at the other side of the property. So if you were taking a bus from one of the other parks to Fort Wilderness, it will set you up at the other side of the property. And that's where the older barn is. And that is a great, beautiful place to be able to see all of these wonderful horses. And one of the activities that you can do at Fort Wilderness is go horseback riding, which is something that I did for the first time last year when I was staying there. Now, I say horseback riding, but a friend of mine, when I explained the activity, he's like, "Oh, so you basically just sat on a horse that was walking slow." And I said, "Yeah, that's what I did." But I've never done that before, so I was very impressed with myself, and I was so nervous. I got on the horse and I was like, "What am I doing? This is crazy. This is ridiculous." And then the horse sneezed. And so this body moved and I was like, "Oh my God, why am I doing this?" Anyway, the cast members were fantastic. They lead you through this path through the woods in a single file. They put me right at the front with the cast member. And I don't know if that was because they saw how nervous I was and they wanted to keep me calm, or they were just like, "Ugh, I'll just keep this woman close by just in case something happens." The walk through the forest was just so beautiful, and we did get to see a deer, and I was really proud of myself for doing this activity. And I think if it was not at Disney, I would not have done it. And I did that solo, and there were adults that were on it. A lot of adults were there with their children, but it was a very solitary activity. The cast member that was at the front of the line talked to me through the whole thing. Again, I don't know if it was because she saw how anxious I was and it calmed me down, because it really did, or if she was just bored. It was like, "Oh, I bet this lady has a lot to say," which I do. So anyway, it was a really great activity, and that is something that you can do at Fort Wilderness. Right now, they are redoing a lot of the cabins for these DVC cabins, and as a result, there is a lot of construction Monday through Friday. And so, because of that, they have paused the horseback riding Monday through Friday. I was there over the Labor Day weekend and I didn't see any horseback riding happening then either, or horse trail riding, I guess you could say. But I did see some cast members out with the horses to like give them some exercise. So just make sure you check when you're going to see if they are running at that time or if the construction is getting in the way. So I'm really glad I did that activity last year because of that. But this year I got to do another activity, which was archery. And that was not kind of like what I imagined. I imagined we were going to do it in like an open field, and instead we were doing it in like a parking lot. Which doesn't sound great, but I don't know. It was like a golf cart parking lot. It wasn't, like a Target or a Walmart or whatever. And it happens quite often. There were quite a few different times during the day that they are running the archery, so it was very easy to sign up for. I can't remember how much it was cost, but it wasn't overly expensive. And you really had it was an hour and a half. They do 30 minutes of training, which was really helpful, a lot of safety stuff. And then you really have an hour to do a whole bunch of shooting of bows and arrows. And I haven't done archery since my grade 5 gym class where we did it for 2 weeks. So it was really cool to do. I got bruises all up and down my arms, and if you follow me on Instagram, you might actually remember seeing some of these gnarly bruises, and that shouldn't dissuade you from doing it because I know my body. I'm not surprised. I bruise very, very easily, and I actually was really proud of having these cool souvenirs from archery. And when I was showing, when I went back a couple days later and I showed the cast members the bruises, they also thought they were cool souvenirs. So everyone else is horrified. I thought it was pretty cool. So again, that's something else you can do at Fort Wilderness. Now, if you remember at the very beginning of the episode, I said something like, with one exception, you don't need to go to any of the other hotels to do the campfire. And here we come, going back to that, because going to Fort Wilderness for the campfire is the exception. Not only does Fort Wilderness have a campfire, they have a campfire sing-along with Chip and Dale. And this is completely free, and it happens every single night, and it was super fun. So they have this whole open air theater that is designed just for this. They do the campfire, and then a singer comes out and he tells all these jokes and he sings these songs and he encourages you to sing along. And then Chip and Dale come out and they pose for pictures and you sing some songs with them. And maybe this sounds cringy and corny, it certainly did to me when I started thinking about it, but it was so fun and it was funny, and the singer was just again, really funny. It was just a really, really awesome moment to go and experience this. And it's free. And so if you are interested in doing something at night and not being at the parks and you're I don't know what to do, go to Fort Wilderness, take a walk around, check out the property, and then head to the campfire to roast a marshmallow, do a sing-along, and then go back to your hotel. It's really cool. And you might think oh my gosh, that seems like a lot to go to a whole other hotel for it. It's not. It's a really cool place. And it's the place where they do the campfire is kind of easy to get to. Kind of. Fort Wilderness is so large that they have an internal bus system. They actually have a couple different bus routes. These buses are never busy at all, and I'd actually be very surprised if they are still running the same way they are running right now a year from now. But anyway, whether you come to Fort Wilderness from the buses, or you come to Fort Wilderness from the boats. Either way, you go to the place where you catch the internal bus, and you say to the bus driver, I want to go to the meadow. And the meadow is where they have the pool, and they have a gift store there, and they have a snack bar there, and they have the campfire there. And it is not a difficult request to ask the bus driver to let you know, because that is one of the main stops. And don't ever feel feel shy about, and this is not just for Fort Wilderness, don't ever feel shy about asking cast members like how to navigate a hotel that's not yours. Not once have I ever been at a different hotel and a cast member was like, oh, you don't belong here. I'm not going to answer that question for you. Not once. One time I was at Riviera having breakfast and a cast member came up to me. She was an older woman and she was definitely like management type feel. And she said, oh, how's your breakfast? And I said, oh, very good. Thank you so much. And she's like, oh, are you a DVC member? Because Riviera is mainly a timeshare, Disney Vacation Club. And I said, no, I'm actually staying at the Caribbean Beach, but we love it here and we come here for breakfast. And she's like, oh, okay, enjoy your breakfast. So I just think of that as like a DVC thing. That is definitely not my experience with any of the other hotels. And I've gone to all of them and explored them without actually staying at them. So you should do that too, solos. And I hope this episode, even though this was a long one, really encourages you to explore some of these things as well. Now, I'm sure I have missed some really cool activities, both that are formal and that are scheduled and ones that just kind of like happen. And so let me know if there is an activity that you have done at the resort that didn't involve you being at the park, but just was like, oh, this is such a wonderful moment of solo magic. Let's make a list of all these cool things and make sure that other solos can appreciate them as well. So anyway, until next week, I'm really excited. I'm doing an episode about enchanted extras at the parks, and also I'm creating a list of things not to do as a solo, which, oh my gosh, it's really bumming me out, even though it's supposed to be very helpful for you. But then I'm also doing this episode of just like miscellaneous tips. So look out for those. All right, until next week. Bye. Hey solos, it's Samantha. I hope you enjoyed this episode as well as all the episodes of Disney Solo Magic. It has been so wonderful to create this podcast content for you and to help build this community of conversations about solo travel to Disney. And I really, really thank you for participating in the conversation. It would be even extra awesome if you could participate in the conversation by letting other people know that this conversation is happening. Please make sure you subscribe to the podcast, rate it, share it with others, and even providing a review helps the algorithm let other people who are interested in Disney content find out about this podcast. You can also find me on Instagram, Threads, and Facebook, although Instagram is the best way to get in touch with me. My Instagram handle is Disney_solo_magic_podcast. And you can find links to all that social media content in the description of this podcast below. Thank you again for sharing the magic of solo travel to Disney, and I can't wait to keep creating content for you. Bye!